Hi, Bhavan. A very warm welcome to you to Off-Grid's kind of inaugural webinar. And really appreciate your accepting the invitation to speak with us in this forum. It's a pleasure for us to have you here. Our intention behind these webinars is to speak to some very successful global organizations and their leaders on how they went about this whole journey in the last 15 days and take that journey to a larger base of people we connect to Northbridge. We being the largest company in the business of authentication, we cater to thousands of customers and reach out to millions of people every day as we screen them. So we thought it would be a good idea to take learnings out of people like yourselves, aggregate them, and the collective learnings can actually help a lot of people who are probably listening in now and will listen to this later to kind of learn a few things and implement them in their businesses. I think we all know, we all keep talking about black swan events, in the history, in the world of financial investments, but I think very few of us have actually seen black swan events in our lifetime. So this is a black swan event which all of us have collectively seen in our lifetime, an event which I think we all pray and hope and pray should end as quickly as it started. Obviously unprecedented, and organizations like yourselves had to be very nimble to transform and to implement those transformations at a global scale. And that's truly phenomenal. I think some of these transformations, when we see in global organizations, people like me who are sitting as founders of small companies, I think we are very intrigued. And it's very, very heartening for us to kind of learn from people like yourselves. It was very heartening to see the press release today where Uber talked about the vaccination of the drivers, and it's kind of very reassuring for somebody like me who himself is a user of Uber quite extensively, and his entire team actually uses Uber for commute. So over the next 30 minutes or so, I'll kind of take you a little back into March, starting from March 2020, and try to extract some learnings out of you through the journey of this whole pandemic. But feel free to tell me anything more than what I think I might not have covered or might not have asked you, and which you think would be helpful to the larger audience in their learnings. In March 2020, when WHO first announced that this is a pandemic, and we were all advised social distancing, and businesses have to shut shop, and we have to all work from home. A lot of businesses, like probably ours, which was still, we could work entirely from business from home and still continue to do revenue, very different from the business like yourself, which was very close contact with the end customer, where the customer has to be in the vehicle, and then because the commutes weren't happening, etc. What was the first reaction the global team in Uber had to this announcement? Before we go into what were the actions you took and all that, we like to just know how did it go about? How did the team go about? What were the thought processes first?
Thanks, Ajay. Firstly, it's a pleasure to be here. I go back to March of 2020, and I think when this started unfolding, the advantage Uber has is because we operate across the globe, we were beginning to see things faster than probably some other companies which may be more localized. And in times of crisis, what you need is very clear leadership, because everyone then is looking up and saying, tell us what to do. We don't quite know. There's a lot of noise, right? You don't get clear signal as to what exactly is going on. So the first thing that we did was we established a global leadership team, a global steering committee just for COVID, and brought in, senior leaders from across various parts of Uber. And in India, for the India South Asia region, similarly, we set up a steering committee. And what I found was that the speed at which we could operate, just dramatically went up, right? Because in times of crisis, you need clear leadership and rapid execution based on information which is available. So that was, one thing that we did. The second is we realize that while we are experts uh, in transportation, we are experts in technology, we are not experts when it came to COVID-19, right? So we reached out and established relationships, with epidemiologists, etc., to get guidance because we wanted expertise and we wanted the science and expertise to guide our decision making. So that was the next thing which was done. We also decided very closely to partner with governments because they had all the information, and we wanted to make certain that we were doing things in order to enable them to address this crisis, and we felt that there was something that we could do over there. So I would say clear leadership, looking at expertise and following the science, and then working with government were probably the three early tenets of our reaction which was there. And when we looked at this from an India perspective, we said, very soon there was a complete lockdown which was declared. I think many of us still remember that day. And we thought it would be probably for a week, and then it started getting extended. And you could either go into a victim mode, or you could say, what is it I can do to really help the country? And where our kind of thinking was how can we help the country? How can we help India, right? Whether it is our tech capabilities, whether it is our talent, can we provide funding or investment to make a difference in some areas? We have a vast transportation network. So that was, one thought process. And as a consequence of this, we started doing a couple of different things. We found that in the news, doctors, healthcare workers, they did not get transportation from their home to the hospital, right? Because everything was locked down. It was a complete lockdown, right? So we created a product called Uber Medic, where there was a screen, a safety screen, again, something that we created, which would separate the driver from the riders. And then we provided this service in partnership with the NHA to government hospitals. And then we parallelly also worked with private hospitals, right? Then we found that people were not getting their groceries, right? Because companies had not factored such a dramatic shift. So we worked with folks like Big Basket, Flipkart, Spencer's to provide last mile delivery, right? Basically augmenting their network. Then we found people could not go. If I am, let's say, a dialysis patient, I could not go to the hospital because I couldn't find transport. So we worked with cities and we got passes for some of our drivers to create a dedicated fleet, and we geo-fenced the hospitals and the pharmacies where the government permitted travel, and you could actually take an Uber Essential and go and get medical treatment done while all this was going on. So basically launching a number of products specific to that situation, using our technology capability, using our network, and being solution providers in this moment of despair all around.
Well, this is incredible. I mean, considering that first reaction could have been the business is going to get impacted, to on the contrary set up a steering team and start working very closely. And I'm sure Uber would have worked closely with governments across the world, not just India. This is phenomenal to see how some of these initiatives were created in practically no time. And I'm pretty sure that these would have really come extremely handy, and the governments would have also been extremely pleased to have a private organization like yourself working closely with them. On the customer and driver partner side, what was the reaction, and particularly the driver partners? I'm sure they would have been overwhelmed with what's going to hit them. So preparing them for what's going to come, and then supporting them, and then of course taking care of their safety and well-being in the process. Tell us a little bit about that, Pawan.
So I'm going back and kind of teleporting myself to those months. The first thing was that there wasn't clear guidance on what to do. Guidance was evolving. So we were following the CDC, the WHO, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, right? So basically experts. And the early decisions that we made, the first was we said no mask, no ride, right? Both for drivers and for riders. If you do not wear a mask, then you cannot take the ride. And for our drivers, we actually gave out at our cost, so this is free for the drivers, 3 million masks to them, right? Now, I'll talk about the technology elements later. The other thing that we, at that time, the thought was that this could spread through surface this thing. So you could have aerosol which is on the surface, you could get it. So we provided free disinfectant spray plus refills to our driver partners, and we gave over 200,000 of those, right? What we also did was we created what we call a safety cockpit. This is a enclosure using thick sheeting, transparent sheeting, and we installed it in over 200,000 cars and autos, so that there was a physical barrier, right, between the driver and the rider which was there. Now, this was on the product side, and we did not charge for any of this. This was all at Uber cost. Then we, travelers are very concerned. So at airports, we set up sanitation stations so that in front of the rider, the car would get sanitized there, and you would have the comfort of knowing that you're sitting in a car that is hygienic. Now, in addition to this, we leveraged technology, and we had a selfie product. So the driver would have to take a selfie, and only if they were wearing a mask could they go on. And many months later, actually, we brought that technology on the rider side also. So a whole bunch of safety innovations, video-based education for our drivers, so they get educated. Then we also had two-way feedback. And also, if you wanted to cancel a ride because you were feeling unsafe, either as a rider or as a driver, then there would be no cancellation fee. So as you can see, a comprehensive set of steps we took basis the information which was available at that time. I'm talking of, March to probably May timeframe.
Yeah, I mean, and everything was evolving, and things are evolving almost every single day with new guidelines coming in, and sometimes very conflicting guidelines coming in from the regulators. One country saying one thing and the other another. But what's also incredible, Pawan, and we will love to learn more about it. How did you go about disseminating whatever your philosophy was, right to the driver partner, and ensuring that if you're creating a philosophy or a policy of no mask, no ride, then the driver actually honors it. While you said selfie was one way, but what were the other things you did to ensure that the message of that you're there for the partners and you're there for the customer actually went out to the customers? Considering that it's such a large organization and such a wide expanse of customer, obviously everybody I know of uses the service. How did this communication go out effectively?
So you're correct. I mean, we need a 360-degree communication process, and you've got to be repeated about it. And so we launched on the rider side a Safer for Each Other campaign, right? And we communicated, whether it was through push notifications, through email, SMS messages, social media is of course an interesting one. So we had videos which went out, and I think that worked well. And we clearly saw riders getting educated. But equally important, it is very critical for us that our service providers, which is our driver partners, also understood this. And so what we did was we created a number of videos, and these are tailor-made to whether you're a car driver or you're driving a two-wheeler or a three-wheeler. And then we pushed it out to them, and we were checking whether they're watching it or not. Then, of course, we have our app, so we can do in-app messaging, we can do SMS. We also started doing video Samad sessions. A Samad session is when we get a group of drivers together and take feedback from them. Now, earlier we would meet them in person, right? And this is very important. It's part of the Uber DNA. And then when COVID happened, we obviously could not meet them in person. So we started doing them virtually over Zoom. And we found that this was actually equally or more effective. And so hearing our driver partners and hearing what their needs are, their challenges are, is very important. I think it's very easy for us to speak, but it's very important that a conversation is a two-way process, right? So that is again something that we put a lot of emphasis on, and I think that's something that worked well. Prabh, who's our general manager for the region, he himself does video podcasts and audio podcasts, and we send them out to our driver partners, and basis whatever we hear, we make changes. So it is indeed a two-way conversation.
Oh, it's phenomenal. I mean, having been a user on the other end, to see the communication flowing seamlessly back and forth, it was quite incredible. The speed at which it was being done. I'm sure
Right.
the steering committees across that were working on these projects were doing a. I'm sure they were burning midnight oil day after day after day to get to this, and I'm sure there's a huge amount of commitment that went behind it. Um, Another question that comes from there in my mind is, the driver partners. I'm sure there was a lot of fear of contracting the infection. The driver partners, while they were being asked to ferry the medics or the paramedics, or they were being asked to help with the essentials transportation and so on and so on. So it's but natural for somebody to say, okay, I won't like to do it. On the other side, knowing the social strata from where they come, there will obviously be a need for them to continue to do this in order to earn their bread.
Mhm.
So did this ever create a onboarding problem for Uber, that okay, how do we get more riders on board, and how do we continue to ensure that the safety protocols that we followed, whether it is around verifications, it's the onboarding protocols, we follow them continuously through the process. Tell us a little bit about that.
So maybe I'll break this up into phase one and phase two because the answers were a little different. Phase one being, March onwards of last year, and phase two being the wave we just are kind of at the tail end of now. So, in wave one, the fact that we gave out PPE kits, which consisted of masks, sanitizers, disinfectant spray, and it's not that we gave it out once and you were done. We were tracking the number of trips that you took, and when we found that you're getting close to exhaustion, assuming you were using them the way it was intended to, we would call you in and say, please take a refill, right? And the drivers were so pleased with the support that we offered. When we would do dipsticks with them, they said, you truly stood with us and, gave us what was needed in order to keep ourselves safe, because we are, in many cases, the only breadwinner in the family. And then we, of course, had these Uber safety cockpits, which is the physical separator that we talked about. In addition to this, what we did do was we did a direct benefit transfer during the lockdown, because all these various services to, ferry, medical workers, etc., would be impacting only a small number of drivers.
Right.
So about 100,000 drivers were given a direct benefit transfer from Uber during that time, so that they could land up buying groceries and things like that, which is a very, very substantial number of people. And we also provided doctor teleconsultation free of cost for the driver partner and up to 5 family members. Because they're sitting at home, if they're not feeling well, what do you do? And this was true for all driver partners in the Uber family. So that's what we did during phase one. And so we did not find that driver partners were hesitant to actually come and be on the service. They found all these safety measures, and they would say we felt like a safety warrior because we were ferrying doctors around, for example, right? So there was a sense of national passion, so to speak, right? Yeah. I think in phase two, the world changed. We realized that, based on scientific advice, that transfer through surface contamination is very low, right? The risk of that. And the single biggest thing that you could do is provide a jab to a driver partner and get them vaccinated. So that's what we decided to do, right? We've launched this endeavor where we would like to vaccinate ideally every driver partner on the Uber platform. In phase one, we have taken a target of 150,000 driver partners. So far, we have done about 37,000. So we're making rapid progress over there. And you, Ajay, know you are our partner. You're helping us build a tool through which we can validate this, right? So it's very important when we say 37,000 people, that's 37,000 people whose vaccination certificate we have validated, right? The doctor teleconsultation continues. In addition, if a driver tests positive and is unable to drive, because we would waitlist them, we will give them up to 2 weeks of earning support, right?
Wow. Okay.
And in the unfortunate situation that there is a bereavement of a driver due to COVID, right? We provide a one-time, bereavement benefit also, right? So this is in addition to all the earning opportunities which we are providing, because we are also doing a free vaccination right. So if you want to get vaccinated and you would like to go to a center, then you can put a coupon code and Uber will, give you a free ride back and forth. We are doing this with the government and we've committed 10 crore rupees worth of free rides. And obviously all this money goes to our driver partners in terms of earning. So I think this is how we kind of look at it, depending on whether you're talking of phase one or phase two.
Right. No, I think phenomenal. I think it's I think that was my next question anyways, but good that you evolved onto that. So we heard we read the press release today morning about it. So it's very heartening to hear that, and it's great that you're taking an initiative of this scale and how it's panning out. So a question that's kind of popped up on my screen is, and maybe relevant again, is around how Uber's kind of taken similar initiatives at the employee end. So while we look at the driver partners and the customers, we'd love to know a little bit more about how what kind of initiatives have been taken around the employees.
See, the well-being of our employees and their families is critical. And one thing I do want to point out is that Uber does have a very large commitment in India, because we also have a lot of our technology resources, our global support resources, in addition to people who are running the India business itself. What we did was we had pools of oxygen concentrators that we built up in our 4 office locations, and employees could take them for themselves or their families free of charge. Because it was not very long back that lack of oxygen was actually causing people to go grievously sick. The second thing is we had relationships where we could provide assistance with regard to hospital beds, COVID ambulance support, getting RT-PCR tests done. And we had a 24/7 Slack channel where we had dedicated resources. So if you said, my mom is in hospital, this is the medication she needs, we would put a person on the job for your case, and they would be helping you. Why don't you go to this pharmacy? We last got to know that they have medicine available. And these kind of sessions which were there, I think were just tremendous. So these are some of the things that we have done. And I think it was really, people felt very cared for, whether it is our employees, whether it is our contract workforce, or our hero partners, right. The entire ecosystem. And this is in addition to everything that we did with local governments in order to extend Uber support. Because we were, ferrying oxygen cylinders, concentrators for various NGOs working in partnership with local government.
Right. Well, this is incredible, and thanks for sharing all this. I mean, I'm sure a lot of this is, probably being heard outside of the Uber ecosystem for the first time, and a lot of organizations, do a lot of things and don't always kind of come out and talk about this. But this is phenomenal, and thank you so much for sharing. A question which is slightly more, futuristic and strategic is, the whole world of mobility, I guess, is going to see a transformation now with, what we are going through. While we are saying vaccination, but there is a lingering doubt on the effectiveness of the vaccination and how it's going to happen. Businesses have been impacted. Work from home kind of seems like it's going to become a norm. It's never going to be 100% people working from office, and I know because I have family in the US, and even in the US, the norms that I'm seeing being released by corporates are very similar. So how do you see that impacting the world of mobility and the business of mobility in general?
So I will give India perspective here, if that works. One is that after wave 1 and before wave 2, we found that there was actually quite a strong recovery. So we believe that as these waves begin to wane off, we are going to see a significant recovery, which will come back to rideshare, and people are variabilizing their cost structures, right? And rather than own assets, we believe that in due course there will be a move where people will say, listen, if I have a safe ride could be a vaccinated driver and rider, we are very keen to actually go down that path. The other thing that we are seeing is that our low-cost product portfolio, which is our auto and moto, saw very rapid recovery. Some of it could be just because it's open format, etc. Right? So as we look forward, we see continued focus and growth in those formats. It was our aspiration before COVID happened that we will get to 200 cities and beyond. We are making very good progress, so we expect to restart that. And then, innovative products like auto rentals. Can you take an auto for 4 hours, 40 kilometer equivalent, right? Something that we have started. And we see this continued shift of, rather than hailing stuff on the street, people will use, their mobile device to actually request transportation, because so much of digitization has happened because of COVID, right? So many people who were not using smartphones have really started using them, or maybe they had a smartphone, but the level of utilization has gone up pretty dramatically, right? So we see that continued trend of moving to electronic hail from street hail.
So another facet to this whole transformation that we are all seeing in businesses is, again, around our own people. And in my own experience, I'm seeing there is one lot of people who are really going out of their way to support the organization during these times, whether it was the steering team and a lot of other people in Uber and a similar set of people in Orbit. And then there's a set of people who are, going through their own, mental agony because of either having lost a family member or sometimes it's just the thing that you're operating from home or from an enclosed environment, and that's not what you're cut out for. So how is housing planning? What's your view on that in general? How do you maintain your own work-life balance? Because sometimes I struggle. I think the day just doesn't end now. Earlier it used to end when I used to kind of say, okay, I'm going home, but now it doesn't end. So give me a little bit of insight on that. What are your views on how the world will pan out generally in future for organizations in general?
So, it's been a long story, right? I mean, initially we all saw a boost in productivity. I think many companies would say that. Some of the commuting time was lost in the sense that you were not spending an hour each way or longer in commuting. Meetings are more efficient because there was no random chit chat. You were discussing what is the topic and you're done. And frankly, people are just putting in longer hours, right? But my view is that we should also look at the sustainability and the engagement of the employees during, this phase. And I think remote working did have its, adverse effects. I think there's a level of disengagement. Some people were caregivers at home. Someone was not sick. I can tell you, a lot of people were just so shocked with the negative news which was coming out. They just didn't know how to deal with it. I mean, whether you open a TV channel, whether it's a WhatsApp group, or whether it's a conversation among friends, it was all pretty, morose and difficult to handle. And people went through burnout, right? And I also think that innovation suffers. There is some kind of innovation which happens, but taking ambiguous problems, etc., it is best done when you're together with people, you're brainstorming, and that employee connection decreases, right? Especially in fast growth environments, where new employees are joining or new team members get added because you were in one team, you got shifted. So I think there is this gradual erosion of trust and gradual kind of loosening of the bonds. And, we've tried compulsory lunch hours. We have tried no meeting Fridays. I have canceled non-essential meetings post the second wave. I think there has been marginal success. To be candid, I wouldn't say we found the magic formula. But where I did find things help is where there's a personal touch. Someone reaches out and says, hey, let's just catch up. And it's not about, what is happening on the business, but how are you doing, right? What's going on? Has something nice happened? Is someone sick at home? I think that spontaneity, replicating the office water cooler where you're, meeting and just chit-chatting, kya hal chal hai, I think that is very, very important. And the more that comes back, the reason I'm a fan of hybrid working, and I think it will come back in that form, is because you're able to replicate the water cooler talk, etc., and yet give people the space which is needed. What we don't understand is, unlike other countries where people might have bigger homes, you have a quiet place to work. That's not true for all our employees at all. Many of them are in smaller living quarters, maybe shared accommodation, and then how do you manage all this? So I think our construct, our limitations are separate. So we in Uber are certainly looking to get back to office in a hybrid working environment. We were hoping for September. I think in India the timelines will depend a little bit on how wave 2, wave 3 kind of pan out. But that's how we are thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think engagement clearly was one area which we also as an organization felt was beginning to get broken, and as you said, erosion of trust. People and a lot of new people joining in the teams were all remotely joining, so you never get to know the person. You only know the professional on the other side of the call every time.
Right.
And despite a lot of initiatives at our end, also I think it's been a roller coaster ride. And we also feel that the hybrid model is the right way of doing this. So it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. So, but how have you been keeping yourself healthy and safe? I know, how are you maintaining your personal activity level?
So, it's been tough because there is no boundary between work and home. And, earlier what I would say is let's go for a vacation. But today, even that seems, implausible. So I think, I get my recharge by, my wife and I go for a regular walk in the evening. That's our time to catch up and kind of for me to de-stress. I finally started watching some Netflix with her. It took me a good part of wave 1 and some of wave 2 before I got there. And
team will be very happy to hear this.
Yes, I'm taking suggestions from them. And, finally, I'm hoping to get a dog, which I've always wanted to do. Let's see if we finally get agreement. This is a tough one. I've been told I have to take care of all the caregiving for the dog if I do that. But yeah, those are some of the things which kind of land up de-stressing you. But I love talking to my team. So, I will generally reach out, what's going on, and just learning about, their stories and being able to help in any which way, even if it's emotional support. That is de-stressing for me.
Yeah. And last question, an entrepreneur to an entrepreneur. You had a phenomenal journey, a journey to be very proud of, being co-founder at one of India's most successful BPO organizations, to leading India's one of the most talked about organizations as its second city ahead. What are the top 3 things that you would recommend to an entrepreneur, anybody who's founding a new company or has founded a company? Top 3 things the person should bear in mind as we wade through this phase of uncertainty, maybe another year or so that we can potentially see. What would you recommend?
So few things which come to mind are, one is focus on your core, right? Don't try and get distracted. That's also been the Uber mantra during this phase. Right? Second is the culture matters, right? The culture and value system is the glue that holds the teams together, right? It is the value system that holds our families together, exactly the same true in companies. So that is super, super important, right? And, there is always light at the end of the tunnel, and you will come out stronger as you go through this phase. I can tell you that every company who survives, through COVID is going to come out much stronger, will have a much brighter future, which is there. And so you just have to, and there is no better test of resilience, than what we are going through. One hopes that you don't have to go through, baptism by fire, but that's what it is. And so, make certain that, you are looking after all those people who have the resilience and who are taking you and your company through this, period.
No, thank you very much. That's very helpful. So I have a few questions which have come in on the screen, and I'll just read them out for you. We have a few more minutes. Have you had any reactions on the vaccination verification feature from your customers yet? Does it make them feel safer? I mean, the press release that has gone out today, and have you started hearing from the customers yet?
So
You've done market research prior to this.
Whatever dipsticks that we have done through our insighting has shown that riders feel very reassured when the driver partner is vaccinated. So that is certainly the feedback so far, but it's early days. We are continuing to do more research on this.
Another question I'm reading is safety has become a very big issue for the Uber riders, obviously, and even with so many precautions taken by Uber and driver partners, riders are still skeptical. Is there any grand communication strategy that is there on the cards to convince the rider partners to take an Uber ride and discover these things?
The way I see it is that if you are going to decide to move, right, for whatever purpose, whether it is for work or whether it is socially or you want to go out shopping, you got to make choices between the options which are available, right? And there we hope that Uber provides the safest option which is there, for your ride, no matter what the format is, right? Through the precautions that we take, either leveraging our technology or through vaccination of drivers, right? Things like that.
Right. So another question that comes, which is more futuristic, I would say, is around, sometimes an incident of this nature, has kind of triggered innovation to a level that it's, and the speed of innovation has been much, much faster. At least I've seen that in Outbridge, and I can see a lot of that in Uber also from what I'm hearing from you. So we keep hearing about driverless cars in India or globally and all that. So that's another way of saying that the rides will become safer as it's only the rider in the car and the driver. Do you think that's a reality in future?
So I think driverless cars are still quite a distance away, right? We would I think before that, really the focus is how to bring no pollution cars, right? So basically EVs onto a global platform, or work with public transport, right? And micro mobility. So our commitment is that by 2040, we will be a completely no pollution platform, because either we'll have EVs or we'll work with micro mobility, or we will work with public transport. And even in India, we've made a significant commitment towards public transport. So in cities like Delhi, Bangalore, Hyderabad, you can see the metro routes on the Uber app, right, which is there. So we believe that we are actually a piece of the transportation puzzle. It's not that we are competing with public transport. Both have to coexist, and there's a use case for each. So that is where we are going.
Right. So if you were to summarize, Pawan, for the audience, I mean, in the last 1 year, there's been some learnings for all of us, and those learnings on how we're going to change the way we live, the way we conduct our businesses in future. What have been the top 1 or 2 things that have come to your mind, which you think will change the way you work as a professional and the way you drive the organization, the way you think as an individual?
So a couple of things, and maybe I'll give you some business learnings, and at least this is the learnings I've had in Uber. First is, the more you can variabilize your cost structure, the greater is your ability to take the downturns and downswings which are there. So very, very important. Second is leadership and resilience matters. I think during the whole COVID phase, outstanding leadership and leaders with great resilience really showed up within the Uber system. And then for us, the Uber scale and the innovation, the tech innovation we bring to the table, we really found it could make a massive difference in people's lives. and the insights that we got globally, we were able to port them locally. And then stay close to your mission. For us, it's mobility, technology, and innovation, right? And we just reaffirm our focus on safety and people health. That is very, very important. I don't think COVID is going away very quickly, so that continues to be a focus for us.
Right. No, great. So I think that's pretty much the questions that I can see from the audience. So it was really awesome talking to you, Pawan, and I think some of the things that you shared on how Uber's gone about building trust with its driver partners and the riders. I think I'm absolutely sure it's going to go a very, very long way in building Uber as a very different kind of an organization in the future. I think the degree of respect that your partners and driver partners, customers, and even partners like us have for the organization when we've seen the partnership through a difficult time is very different and at very different levels. So thank you so much for doing that. And personally for me, I think this session's been extremely rewarding and learning. Picked up quite a few things and will definitely love to implement them in Oxbridge. Anything you would like to say towards closing this? But thank you so much for your time.
No, thanks, Ajay. It's been a pleasure. And I think in closing, my closing thoughts would be one. I think leading with empathy is very important. I think it truly distinguishes those organizations which are special versus run of the mill. And second is hopefully what this has taught each one of us is don't delay the things which are on your bucket list. If you want to spend time with your parents, do it. If you want to take a vacation, do it. If you want to learn the piano, do it, right? So that would be my kind of closing message. Do the things that you love and do them now.
No, I think well taken. Thank you so much for your time, and it was a pleasure to have you with us today. And please stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ajay.
Thanks a lot.